All right, and oh, we should be okay. Oh, too many browsers playing. There we go. All right. So you should be able to see me. I'm going to set up my camera a little better. Oh, Lou's here. Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Lou, you're here. Wonderful.
Hello.
Hey, all right. Let me change our little. You got it?
What?
Your email's giving you issues?
I'm just down the road from you, and I'm in Greenwich. I am here.
Awesome. I'm just getting my camera set up real quick. But Barry, sorry for the delay, guys. We had technical issues. Nothing new to the tech space, but we are live and we are ready to go. I would like to introduce Barry. And can you pronounce your last name for me? Because I am terrible with last names. And I butchered it like once or twice, and I hate doing that.
So it's Finkelstein.
Finkelstein. Okay, Finkelstein. Gotcha. There, I should be moving my lips now. Can you guys see me right?
Not great.
Not great?
You're definitely better last week.
Oh, let me go forward. I'm way too far back. That's probably what it is. Oh, hold on. You know what it is? I'm like flying. But you guys go ahead. You can go ahead and take the lead, Lou, while I adjust my avatar here.
Okay. Hey, Barry. So welcome to Crypto Mondays. For those of you who don't have never been to before COVID, we used to meet in person. There have been Crypto Mondays in 57 cities around the world. I've been running crypto since January 8th, 2018. And we have Crypto Mondays, again, 57 cities. And since COVID, we moved New York into VR with the help of Annalie. We were running it in alt space where everybody had to have a VR headset. And then we found that was great speakers. So in order to broaden out, now we're also on YouTube. And this week, I'd like to welcome our guest, Barry Finkelstein from Algorand, which is one of the more high-profile Layer 1 protocols. So welcome to Crypto.
Well, thanks, Blue. Appreciate being here. Appreciate the platform to talk with you.
All right. Hopefully, you guys can see me better now.
Pretty new to crypto.
I apologize.
So yeah, I think
I'm hearing Lou.
Be great.
I'm sorry. What was that?
I'm finding that Lou's breaking up. I'm not hearing him very well.
Oh, it might be where he's at. He's Lou's right now a digital nomad. So it might be where he's at. He told me he was in an unfamiliar location, which is probably why he was having some technical difficulties. Maybe the Wi-Fi is not great.
Sure.
Lou, it looks like he's okay now. I'm not sure if he's standing still. Lou, can you wave at us? Hello, everyone who's in VR. This is Barry Finkelstein. He's with us today. He's from Algorand. He's going to be talking to us about digital assets. Okay, Lou, are you with us?
Yeah, I can hear everybody fine.
Yeah, we can hear you too, but you break up a little bit. But go ahead, continue.
No, so I was just welcoming Barry. Barry, can you hear me?
I can, Lou. Unfortunately, you go in and out, and so I only get about half of what you're saying.
Okay, I'm shutting down a bunch of stuff.
So gotta love tech, guys. Gotta love the tech. All right. So Barry, while Lou is getting his stuff together, can you tell me a little bit about what Algorand does in a nutshell, and a little bit more about yourself? I know you've been in the financial sector for a really long time.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So, by way of introduction, yeah, I had a 30+ year career on the street. I spent the early part of my career, the first 18 so years, at Merrill Lynch. That was followed by 12+ years at UBS before leaving the street to embark on a little bit of an entrepreneurial journey, working I partnered in with a sports, music, and entertainment lending company called 23 Capital. And while I was on the street, I spent the majority of my career always on the fixed income side of the world, always involved in structured products and derivative products, heading a number of different global distribution, structuring, and trading desks at all different stages of financial development, essentially.
Awesome. And what, I'm sorry, what, can you give me a little more clarification of what you do at Algorand and how you contribute to the community?
Yeah, so I guess to take a couple steps back and how I even got involved with Algorand, perhaps, is when I was at UBS, going back sort of into 2015, 2016, there was a lot of kind of talk around the water cooler, if you will, about blockchain. And like a lot of people back then, I was a great skeptic of it. I didn't really know what it meant. I'd heard about Bitcoin, a little bit about the term blockchain, and candidly, I was one of those ones wake me up when it really means something. I just didn't have much time for it and didn't really know what it meant. And then as years progressed, there was a constant murmur wherever I seemed to turn. There was a conversation going on about crypto and blockchain and DLT, and it certainly started to pique my interest quite a bit. And one of my close relationships, colleague, and friend for that matter, who is a senior partner at one of the largest U.S. fund managers, had always been very blockchain centric and forward. And he would constantly talk me up and chat me up about it. And when I left the partnership at the sports, music, and entertainment company, he suggested that it might be an interesting conversation to have with the CEO of Algorand, a company that they were very much engaged with because they thought that the technology that Algorand had developed was groundbreaking and effectively off the charts and was going to revolutionize the way blockchain was being looked at. So that was how I got introduced to it on a real direct way at that point. And so he put me in touch with the CEO, and we started having a conversation. And the theory was that Algorand, which had built this tremendous technology, and I'll get a little bit more into the history of Algorand, was filled with brilliant minds, brilliant scientists, engineers, and the like. However, while it was building out applications and a technology and a platform to allow others to build out applications for financial usage, there wasn't a lot of inherent knowledge of the financial community. And so with that being my background, there could be a real synergy there, perhaps. And so the CEO, Steve Kokinos, and I started an 8-month dance, if you will. And that ultimately led to me becoming involved with Algorand and on a consultative basis in which I spearhead and look after the business development end from a traditional financials perspective, if you will, or as we like to say, the big guys, for lack of a better term. So while we all seem to be playing with different DeFi applications, because there's just so many of them, my personal purview is to work on some of that, but I tend to spend most of my time focused on the larger banks and other financial institutions from payment rail type of companies to the largest banks, funds, and the like, and helping them address their blockchain knowledge lacking or lacking of what's the best blockchain technology out there.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I read a little bit about Algorand. I didn't know too much about them prior to this, but I did know that in the past they built the first I think either Power POS blockchain that worked like functionally without forking. So I know that much. But tell me a little more about the history of Algorand and I guess how it's evolved in the space of digital assets.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand where Algorand starts from. It's in no way a fork off of any other existing type of protocol that existed. It was a grounds up build by the founder, Silvio Macaulay. Pretty much anybody who's engaged in computer science, let alone cryptography, would recognize the name. Silvio's considered the modern day father of cryptography. He's a Turing Award winner, the Nobel Prize of Computer Science, if you will. He won that award for his work on zero knowledge proofs and verifiable random functions. And he set out to look into and satisfy his own interest when he started hearing about Bitcoin, candidly. And he looked into it, got himself excited about it, but then also realized that there were some obvious flaws to it, and not the least of which was this idea that there's a trilemma that exists that people said couldn't be solved. And that was scalability, security, and decentralization couldn't all be had at one time. You had to give up one in order to have the other two. And he just didn't believe that. And in typical Silvio fashion, he proved everyone wrong. And so that is what Algorand became. His original white paper gave rise to the Algorand protocol, which gave rise to the Algorand company. And you are right that amongst other things, Algorand does not fork. And we can get kind of into that a little bit more, but it's built on a pure proof of stake as opposed to proof of work, which would be what things like Bitcoin and Ethereum work off of. And, you know, I assume most of the audience is a bit familiar with that. But long and the short of it is there is no mining on Algorand as a proof of stake network. Blocks are propagated based on a consensus algorithm. In our case, it's because of our random consensus, which is built into the cryptography, which makes it so powerful. And because it's proof of work versus proof of stake versus proof of work, the benefits to Algorand are pretty magnificent. And that's what got me really excited when I looked at the company, because it's built much differently than what you would see in probably the more well-known protocols like Ethereum or Bitcoin, which is less of a blockchain technology and more of a currency equivalent, if you will. And so when you start looking at Algorand, one of the beauties is that it's incredibly fast and it's completely decentralized, it's open, it's permissionless, and it can propagate blocks in sub 4.5 seconds. It has a transaction put through of roughly 1,200 transactions per second currently. And I can do a little comparison to Ethereum for you on some of these numbers in a moment. And this is all happening at a fractional cost. Essentially, every transaction costs 0.001 algos. And an algo right now trades at 30 cents. So that's the equivalent of 0.003 cents, to give you some idea of that. And because of the way the consensus mechanism works in terms of the verification for a block, it's instantaneous and it's got complete finality. And because it's got complete finality, that makes it incredibly secure. And in fact, it's non-attackable. And for that matter, it's non-forkable. So one of the problems you have with a proof of work system is that you've got miners that are trying to solve a cryptographic puzzle. And it's the first one to solve the cryptographic puzzle that wins. And that he who wins or she who wins gets the staked or the mined coin, if you will. And it's possible that you could have multiple people solve the problem all at the same time. And when that happens, you create multiple chains, and eventually one of those chains will die out. Perhaps even more importantly is if you want to make an upgrade or a change to that protocol, you're most likely going to need to shut down the system and fork it in order to make a major change. That doesn't occur with Algorand either. In Algorand, if you want to make an upgrade, you propose the upgrade to the system, and it would be verified by the validators, and without any interruption whatsoever, it occurs. There's been, I think it's 6 or 7 different major upgrades to the protocol, and it's been done without even the slightest bit of a hitch in any way. So it's pretty spectacular when it comes to that type of response as a way of working. The other thing that's interesting about Algorand is that it truly is decentralized.
Yes, Lou, we can hear you.
That it truly is decentralized.
Sorry, Barry, go ahead.
No worries. So, you know, I'm sorry.
Can Barry hear me? I don't think Barry can hear me.
I can hear you, Lou.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right.
Do you want me to?
Can you hear me, Barry? I know Annalise can.
I can.
Yeah, we hear you.
Well, no, I was gonna say, look, right, because there are lots of chains, obviously, out there that say we're the fastest, we're the best, we're the cheapest.
Ulu's
Come
coming in
on,
hot.
we can do everything. But there are a lot of things that actually make Algorand different, right? There are people who are really doing stuff on Algorand
Yes.
today. When you talk about that, it doesn't matter how fast you are if nobody's using you, right? So what's going on? Talk about
That's a good point.
Everybody's who's deciding.
Boy, I'm having a hard time here.
We're losing you, Lou. So I guess based off what you understood of that question, I think I understood enough for you to answer. But go ahead, Barry.
Okay, I think what Lou's question is that there's 1,600 chains out there, everyone who's got a different claim to what it does well, and yet not a lot of them have anybody really doing anything on them. With Algorand, and of course I point anybody to Algorand's site at www.algorand.com, and you can look at all our use cases, but there's a few that might be interesting just to talk about here. So Algorand is purposely built to allow for the frictionless exchange of value. And so we think of it as being kind of programmable money or programmable finance. And so people that are developing applications in those fields have found Algorand to be incredibly efficient for doing that for some of the reasons that I mentioned. It's incredibly cheap to run. It's incredibly fast to do it. It's devoid of forking and attackability. And so you put all those things together and you've got a very robust and efficient protocol to operate on. So some of the use cases that I think are very interesting, just as a small smattering of the things that you could look into more deeply, MELD, which is essentially the ability to trade gold, where each one of the MELD tokens represents a gram of gold, allows for broad ownership of gold to an audience and an investor base that otherwise would have much more difficulty being able to hold gold or gold-like products. And so it opens up a much broader universe of players in that field. Right. Another interesting use case, Lou, might be the World Chess Organization, who used Algorand
Sounds like there's a lot of feedback.
What? Should I keep going? Sorry,
sorry, keep going. I'm gonna message him. Sounds like the volume, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I was just using the example of the World Chess Foundation, where they created and issued a hybrid IPO. And what they did was, via Algorand, they created a token that allowed them to do a pre-IPO of shares that they would be listing on the London Stock Exchange. And that's really taken on and been seen as a groundbreaking type of a transaction, because it allowed them, and this is what other companies are looking at now, that allowed them to suss out the market and see the type of demand that there would be for their product and allow them to get moving on it before they were even ready to be on the stock exchange and launch the more traditional type of equity product. And by being on Algorand, it allowed them to have scalability that would have otherwise not been practical with some of the other protocols that are out there. Another example of that might be IBMR and Mies.io, which is essentially a micro equity asset that allows ownership of very small fractional pieces of a basket of, or different stocks that could be in a basket of technology companies, and the ones that it's the Netflixes and the Googles and the Amazons, and there's 6 or 7 others at this point that could be purchased that way. And while others could do that, it's this idea that, can you do it and do it to scale at an enterprise and global level, and can you do it in a way that will be cost efficient? And the answer is no, you can't do that in most cases. If you try to run that, for instance, on Ethereum, at this point, it could cost you 100 times what you would be valuing what you were doing. So it never could scale appropriately. That's not the case with Algorand, and that's why we're finding so many folks migrating their use cases over to the system now and using our protocol day in. It's just one after another. I think there's 800 different applications running in one form or another through Algorand at this point, Lou. I know we've got something like 475 situations that are currently in development or close to deploying that are new to it right now. To give you an idea, we're engaged with almost any of the larger CBDC projects that are ongoing. The first CBDC for the Marshall Islands, called the SOV, was actually created for and is being built on the Algorand protocol. So these are just a few of the things these are real. These are happening, and they're not all necessarily have to be in the world of finance, quite candidly. There's a great example of Planet Watch. The token is called the Planet, and that allows to look at air quality globally. They have sensors all around the world that gather information and put that onto the blockchain or onto the immutable ledger, and that's all happening on Algorand too. And the reason it's on Algorand is because of the way that it can scale at an efficient cost. I think that probably leads into an important difference between Algorand and other systems, which is that Algorand's tokens and their smart contracts, our smart contracts, and our atomic swaps all occur at layer one. So you don't have to be a brilliant computer programmer in order to be able to build on Algorand. You're actually...
So again, who's using those? So that's great. But who's using it? Who's doing it? Do you have examples of, like, talked about that it's incredibly simple to build?
Well, all those different folks that I just mentioned are examples of people that are using it.
Yeah. And so that's the things you go, anybody can build rock and roll. What's scaling now in terms of, like, the usage? If you track, what's the most used Algorand?
Blockchain?
Well, no, Algorand is the blockchain. I think what's the most popular token?
I'm sorry?
I think transactionally, it's probably Props that has the most transactional workflow on it.
Props is awesome, right? And have you talked about Props yet?
Yeah, no, I just mentioned it.
I'm sorry, I was offline, but Props is amazing, right? Massive throughput, and the fact, really smart Israeli guys. The company's been around, transitioned to the blockchain.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's adding something to the entire ecosystem of blockchain, right? And to crypto, for that matter, in general, because you're now, one of the issues you've always had, are you build out these great products and you're maybe not getting the value out of it that you should be. And now Props is exactly built to allow for that. But if it's going to happen, it has to be able to happen at world-class scale. And that's what Algorand allowed Props to do. And so Props, which was built on Ethereum originally, has completely migrated itself over.
Yeah. You know how that happened?
Well, I wasn't there at the inception, Lou, to be honest with you. So if you have the anecdotal evidence.
No, I wish I knew. I'm actually a longtime advisor to Props. And, I was just actually emailing with the founder, recently moved from New York.
Who knows everybody, basically.
Yeah, that's right. I get it. But no, I think it's funny. Not too long ago, I was actually watching a promotional piece that he had done that spoke about why he was moving over to Algorand. And honestly, I think no one can do as good a job as he did in that little 3-minute piece, because what it basically says is, if you read between the lines, is why wasn't this here before? Because if it had been, we never would have started on Ethereum. And for all the reasons that we've been talking about, basically. So, look at Asset Block, which is a small real estate entity, but it's precisely what the Algorand protocol can allow for. So it's allowing the fractionalization of real estate holdings, which is virtually something you can't do in the real financial world unless you're going to buy into an ETF of some sort. But now you can, you don't have to go spend $10 million to own a piece of a building. You can spend a very fractional piece of that to own a piece of a real serious piece of real estate, a hard asset, in fact. And so that's what we're really seeing, Lou, is the build out of looking for any asset and I think and we're going to get into this, I'm sure, about where's the world going. But the world's go to.
Yeah, no, very much so. So obviously you're out there, right? The reason that Algorand engaged with you was because you're, very deep Wall Street background in structured products, which, I mean, most of the people who in crypto probably don't even know what structured product means, but it's actually, I would say Wall Street's closest version of DeFi.
That's right. I think it's a fair statement. And in fact, it's why I think I took a liking to this, because people sometimes confuse, but maybe rightly so, that structured products equals financial engineering. Well, to some degree it does.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And if you think about what DeFi is, or for that matter, the use of blockchain for financial commerce, put the word DeFi on it if you want, but I think that's just a fancy way of some cases saying startup. It's financial engineering, and that's what blockchain is doing. It's engineering a new technology that's allowing finance to happen at world-class speed with security and in a way that just has never been thought of before. And
decentralized.
In a decentralized manner. There's no question about it. And look, we get it. And this is one of the things that Silvio speaks very loudly about. It's that everyone has the right to be forgotten, which is a fancy way of saying that privacy still remains important. And so while we're open and we're permissionless and we're a public blockchain, there is the reasoning and the right reasoning for needing to maintain private instances of the blockchain as well. The question is, do you do it in such a way that it has connectivity to a public chain, or do it in a way where you complete yourself in a segregated silo? We would argue the former, not the latter, for all the reasons that benefit you from a centralized system of truth, essentially. And that lies at the core of all of Algorand's thought process, of course.
So in the conversations that you're now having with Wall Street, who, in your experience, kind of is getting it? When you go to a meeting, this guy's doing this, he gets it, or is it just random?
No, actually, it's an excellent question, as a matter of fact, and I'm glad it's not even one that we spoke about, so that's even better. It's really interesting, and in fact, our own marketing people have said, "Okay, Barry, who do we target when we go to talk to a major Wall Street firm?" And the answer is, we don't know when we make the first phone call. And the truth of the matter is, we're going to find out that there's probably a number of different spots with any of the major institutions. And it's true. And the way I think about it is there's a bit of a hub and spoke type of a mentality that exists, or functionality that exists within the big firms, where at the center of the hub is the digital asset, digital marketing, digital markets team. And then off of that are all the different elements that are within the universe of the bank, as an example. And there's that exists at the wealth management side, it exists at the asset management side, and it exists at the investment bank side. And each of them have their own little wants and needs and thoughts about how blockchain could help them, how it could be a product creator and a revenue generator, but they don't necessarily really understand blockchain. So they bring all those thoughts and wants back up into the digital asset, digital marketing, the technology CTO side of the firm that kind of diffuses and deciphers and differentiates between the different chains, and then helps feed that back down to them to figure out how to use it. So when you start to talk to any of the big shops, you can find yourself having multiple conversations with multiple sides of the firm, and they're not necessarily all talking to one another, even within their own walls. And that can be frustrating, but it's just what you have to deal with. And
so when you go in and you're talking to these guys, obviously, there are lots and lots and lots of people in crypto talking to institutional, the same people. From your vantage point, from you seeing, who's doing the best job making inroads and helping to move things along?
Wow. I'm not sure I have the right answer to you in terms of who's making the best inroads on the inbound calls. I feel much more comfortable with the people that we're speaking to, who's doing the best. I don't want to say making the outbounds, but are blockchain and DLT centric and forward.
Well, who are you seeing that's when you go there, they're in discussions, they're implementing, they're testing, is there anybody who you're consistently seeing, wow, okay, they're making inroads? Yes,
I see that. I think a lot of the Yankee banks, which is a fancy way of saying non-US large banking institutions that have.
No, I'm sorry. From the crypto world, there are a lot of people in the crypto world who see the institutional world as nirvana. That's we need to, until we get the institutional world, and so they're highly focused on helping them bring them over from the dark side. And there are lots and lots of those. And I'm just, is there anybody who you see? Oh wow, I see them.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying before. I don't. The answer is no. I don't really think so. To be honest with you, I think it's very disparate. I think, as you said earlier in the conversation, everyone's got the next best slice of bread. It's not surprising to me, though, that when myself and the folks from Algorand are talking to people, I always love the idea that I see the CTOs faces drop when we're on calls like this, because they're like, oh my goodness.
Why are they even meeting with you? What is it that they give a fuck about? Is anything actually happening to any of their businesses? I mean, a heck of dust, right? So why are they even like, there's got to be something going on when they're saying, Jesus Christ, if you're meeting with
I think the reason, Lou, is because they're starting to hit walls. We hear consistently that, and again, I'm not here to badmouth other protocols. I'd rather just talk about the power of our protocols, but is that they're hitting walls or they're falling down their own weight.
Again, I mean, are any of these companies using Ethereum and I don't see Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan doing anything on Ethereum. I don't see any major institution doing anything anywhere. And they, so I'm just
again, I think there are things being done, Lou. I would be unfair to say that there's not things being done and not being looked at on other chains.
Oh no, I'm sure they're looking at it because they know that it's the future, maybe the future, and so they want to be smart about it. But I think it's so small today that, for the most part, the smartest move by all of these companies has been to do nothing.
Well, there's a scare factor, right? Which is we make a move. Right, we make a move and we choose the wrong one, right? And so they have to be careful. They try and keep all their options open. Fair enough. Look, and Algorand is only a year old compared to Ethereum, which is 4 or 5 years old, if you will. And so a lot of things were started or built on something like an Ethereum.
Yeah, but then threw in the towel. Hey, that here consensus, take everything we spent all these years and millions of dollars building.
Well, yeah, right. And so, again, I'm at the risk of not wanting to badmouth other protocols. It's been a nice seat to be in.
Who to blame? Quite honestly, you can blame the protocols, but my guess is, I see lots of companies like Maker and Synthetics and Curve and doing really cool, sick things, and none of the banks are doing anything. So it's not like cool things can't be done. They just today can't be done in a bank. By the way, for regulatory reasons, right?
Yeah. So that's definitely there's a reason why the folks who have to operate in a regulatory environment have to deal with things on a much slower time frame and a longer time frame in a different way. And that's one of the things that, quite candidly, even the work that we're now doing with some of the larger institutions, there's building it, and then there's building it under that framework. Those are not necessarily things that you can just look the other way. You could, if you're doing
that's the whole right. Nobody even knows what you can do. And when nobody's doing really, anything. And if I'm wrong, I'd love to be wrong. Yeah. For me, I don't, this isn't, we talked about this. This is inevitable. So it's like PayPal comes and does it and it's great and I'm happy. But of course, PayPal is going to come. It's like, really? You're surprised that PayPal came?
Yeah, no one should be surprised by that. And I think you'll see all the major credit card companies and payment streams announcing things, whether it's in the next 6 hours, 6 days, 6 months, or 6 years. Everyone will be involved in it in some way. I think regulation will speak to some of this. I'm sorry, Lynn?
Oh my God, 2017, there was a wall of announcements.
Yeah, of course, a lot of that had to do with
ICOs, all of it, the whole thing.
Yeah, look, I'm on your side. I'm not in any way, right? But we've been round and round on these, and so PayPal is super interesting, right? They got 20 plus million merchants, 300 million plus consumers.
Yeah, and again, like we look at that and think that's awesome. It's great. Anything that can bring the notoriety of blockchain and its capabilities, even if they're using Bitcoin as opposed to algo right now, terrific. You know, this is, people will say, okay, where are we in Algorand, in the, you know, to use the old baseball analogy, what inning are we in? Well, I'll tell you, we're not even in the first inning. We're somewhere, you know, pitching, you know, with maybe 1 or 2 outs at this point in the first.
Well, what are we going to see? What do you think we'll see in 2021?
That's an awesome question. And of course, I wish I had the perfect crystal ball for it. Because if I did, I wouldn't tell you, and I would just invest accordingly. The one thing I learned from my dad about, you know, how to make money. if you know the answer, don't tell anyone. But my,
I learned, tell everybody.
Well, my best guess.
Tell everyone.
All right, here it is. When it all happens,
Bitcoin does. We tell everybody.
Yeah, that's how Bitcoin works. You tell everybody.
On Crypto Monday, I don't tell you. On Crypto Tuesday, I'll let you know if I was right or not. So I think there's a few things that I'm expecting to see in 2021. One thing I expect that we'll see is the continued proliferation of stablecoins. I do believe that the idea that takes out some of the variability in the crypto side of the fence will continue to grow, and people will start to use that more and more.
Are you including CBDCs in stablecoins?
Yeah, I mean they're not exactly the same, but they're certainly close enough cousins. Because the second thing I was going to say, what's that?
They're pretty stable.
Yeah,
stablecoins are just trying to be them.
Fair enough. My point was that the other thing I was going to say is that I think you'll see some real CBDC projects, you know, take hold here. We know what China's doing at this point. I think others are soon to follow in short order. I think we'll see some real statements from the regulators. I'm sorry.
You were talking about the Marshall Islands, right? And what's going on there?
Well, I maybe you had cut out before. So the Marshall Islands, which did not have its own currency, has now created its own currency, or is in the process of creating its own currency, and they're doing it via.
That's awesome, actually.
Yeah, they're doing it via a digital asset called the SOV, and that is being built out on Algorand.
And what is that pegged to? I'm sorry, I apologize. I dropped off once I rebooted my computer, I was good. But what is it pegged to something?
Yeah, I'm not deep into that project, so I don't know all the particulars of what the SOV is linked to. So I assume this, but don't hold me to that, because I can answer the question wrongly, but it's easily found.
Almost everything is linked to the dollar.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly not linked to the Chinese yuan. I can tell you that.
But I think the Chinese yuan is going to win. Personally,
do you?
Here, they're going to be the first.
On digital.
They're going to be, they are solving problems while we here in the United States are just shooting each other in the head. Well,
sometimes having the ability to force feed everyone to do what you want is helpful. We do live in a.
I would call what you call that.
Feed.
Right. I'm just talking about being functional. You can say, I go there. Everybody I know is like rock and roll. What the fuck are you doing? In the United States where you can't get anything done and the government strangulates you.
Well, I don't know what to tell you about that, Lou, but unfortunately, we have to live with with the environment that we do have. And
Algorand, where's Algorand domiciled?
We're in Boston.
That's where you're.
Boston is where the headquarters of it is. The Algorand Foundation resides in Singapore, actually, and they look after the algo, the native currency of Algorand. And one of the interesting things is that the foundation, has its own board. It's completely independent. There is some crossover, of course, between folks, not too surprisingly so. And they're supportive of the entire ecosystem. And that's one of the things that I think is different, is that Algorand is a company. It exists. If you are someone who wants to build on Algorand, or for that matter, you're a central bank and you want to work with somebody who you can pick up a phone and actually talk about.
But isn't that the antithesis? And I'm sorry, but you said they're decentralized.
Yeah, but there's a difference between being decentralized and if you want to build on Ethereum, there is no Ethereum company. that you pick up and say, what happens? How does it, this is breaking down. What do I do?
Right. And there's no
Right,
Ethereum.
you have support.
There's no Ethereum company that says, fuck you, we're going to do what's in our best interest and give a shit about you. And that's what most of us are here for, because that's most of life up until this moment. So
Algorand is here to not do that.
I'm sure not. No, I know. Exactly.
Yeah. So you can pick up the phone and there's a developer relations team there at Algorand to help people. And
you're like a red hat, right? Is that the right way to think of it? Right? Linux
a red hat.
But Red Hat is a super successful company that help people optimize Linux.
I believe you. I can't answer, Lou. I'm not familiar enough with Red Hat to speak wisely on it, to be honest with you.
It's okay, Barry. We forgive you.
No. I mean, but again, I don't. And by the way, I don't know Algorand well enough to know whether that. But that's how I think you would set things up if you were going to set things right. I mean, that's Linux has been massively successful. Open source, right? I would think the most successful open source code in the history of mankind, in part because companies like Red Hat built massive companies helping people use it.
Yeah, well, look, Algorand is not a standalone entity where it's trying to do it all on its own. There's a pretty significant ecosystem that's been built around Algorand at this point, which is excellent. But what's great is that its very core, there really is an Algorand company. So we're not the only one who's out there helping people who want to build on Algorand and all. And again, I don't know where Red Hat stands in this metaphor, but there is something very comforting about the fact that there are 80 engineers that work on further the development of the Algorand project and protocol at any given time, and we listen to the feedback and make upgrades to the system because of that. We're also very careful to make sure we don't overpromise and underperform. So when we say that the next upgrade is going to have these things in it and it will be by this date, we hit those targets.
And that's good. I'm sorry. And you were talking about like what we can expect to see in 2021.
Yeah. So again, where we stopped off was that I do believe that, the CBDC will become a much more talked about and realistic occurrence. And I think we will see some real regulation start to come down the pike here. And again, we used to have a saying back in my days on the street, which is the worst thing for us was when there was total gray. Because when it's total gray, you don't know if what you're doing works or doesn't work, is allowed, isn't allowed. You're always operating in the gray. You may not like what you get as an answer, but once you know the black and the white of the answer, then you know how to operate within that world. So while there's all the reasons in the world to have issues with things being overly regulated, which this is not the forum for us to discuss that, it'd be foolish to think that that wasn't going to happen in some form when we all know the power that exists within the world of blockchain and what it could really represent here. And you can see what's happening now in Washington and all the things that you're hearing about from the Fed and all. We're going to see some increased dialogue around that. I don't know exactly where it's going to end up by the middle or the end of 2021, but I feel pretty confident that it'll be on the top of all of our agendas in terms of making sure that, well, everybody better make sure. And my personal belief is that when some form of real hard regulation does come to pass, you will see this, not only the proliferation of blockchains, but the existing blockchains go from whatever it is today, Lou, you tell me, 1,600, 1,700 different blockchains to it will be measured in the tens, not in the hundreds at that point very quickly. That's my guess.
Yeah, no, super exciting stuff. Really, thanks a lot. We ran over. We were talking about getting a half hour of your time, but this has been it's a super, super interesting project. Annalise, anything else?
Yeah, we actually have a few questions from the crowd. It looks like they actually enjoyed this talk. So I'm going to throw them up on the screen here. First one, could Algorand be compared to EOS blockchain in regards of number of validators?
So only because I'm not familiar enough with what EOS has on it to answer that. But in terms of number of validators, anyone who has an algo, even one algo, is conceivably a validator. And based on the amount of stake you have, of course, gives you a better chance of being selected as a validator. So I don't know how EOS works to answer that question. I can only speak to how Algorand works, and then the the person who asked the question could perhaps answer that for themselves based on that. So I apologize. I just don't have the knowledge of the other protocol there.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Next question. I would like to know about Algorand and cross-chain initiatives. Anything going on with what brings other assets, dApps, to Algorand?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, Lou, the one thing I wanted to mention also with respect to 2021 is if you're not hearing enough about it in every conversation that happens now, you for sure will be hearing about it on every conversation starting in 2021, which is the word interoperability. This whole thing doesn't really work unless there is true interoperability. And what Silvio has strived to do is to address interoperability head on. And as great a chain as we believe Algorand to be, the reality is that there will be more than just one chain. There will be. There will be, I don't know if it'll be 3 or 5 or 10, but there will be some, and they'll all have their own benefits. And they need to be able to, in some fashion or another, talk to one another. And so to help to that regard, we have built out the capability to have what we call co-chains, which allows for interoperability between your own public and private chains. And then we're working on what we call the token bridge, which will allow for interoperability between different chains. Now, of course, currently one of the issues there is that you're only going to be as good from a speed perspective as your slowest link in the chain. So we'd love to figure out a way to improve that, but that's what our brilliant engineers are working on all the time, somehow making the other chains quicker, I guess.
Yeah, well, look, I guess there are worse things. Annalise, any other questions?
Yeah, somebody asked, Alex, I guess in regards to the question that I had just mentioned, related to this, how much wrapped BTC on Algorand so far?
Oh, I don't know I apologize. I don't know the answer to that.
Looks like we got the wrong guy from Algorand for these questions, guys. I'm sorry. We'll find the right person and put him in the list. Don't worry.
Yeah, absolutely. But I can guarantee you that there's someone sitting in our product team who would know the answer to that.
That's so funny. Okay, I'm not going to put that one on screen. Sector. So what are you seeing / hearing from the sector about DeFi, composable financial product? Yeah,
so that's interesting. I mentioned that my background is in the world of structured products. Not too surprising, it doesn't take long before people go from the leap of, well, I can probably do a bond, I can probably tokenize a bond, I can probably tokenize a stock. If I can do those things, can I just tokenize pretty much everything and anything? And if I can do that, doesn't that mean that I can now take structured products and put them on chain? And the answer is, yeah, you can. And so I think that's another thing that you're going to be seeing more and more development on. There's a number of different DeFi companies that are engaged either directly trying to do that or engaged with some of the big shops who are big structured product players, of course, to help them in their design of doing that. The other area where I think you're seeing a lot of build is on the private securities transactions side of it, where there are no good transparencies or systems currently. And so blockchain is perfectly tailored and made. And that's why you're seeing so much development there, both from exchanges and data collection and just purely tokenizing different private transactions.
Okay.
Wow. I hope that answered your question, Alex. I'm sorry, Lou. What was that? You were kind of muffled.
No, I was just saying it was a bright future. That we've got in front of us. It's super exciting stuff. So we're at 8:30, Annalise. We're at an hour of Barry's time.
Yeah, we've been on for a while. This was a pretty good conversation. I just want to thank you so much, Barry, for joining us today. We had a couple difficulties, but we got through it. And between the crowd and me and Lou, I think we all enjoyed this conversation.
Well, look, anytime I can be of helpful to anybody there, please reach out to us. Reach out to me directly, barry@algorand.com. Simple as that. As I said, we've got plenty of information for you on our website, and I just love to be able to talk the conversation. Oh, by the way, we actually have a Nobel Prize winner as part of our group of advisors. So, I guess it takes great people to make great companies. So it's
Awesome.
good to have those kind of people involved with us.
What did he win the Nobel Prize, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, just a small thing called economics.
Okay, gotcha.
His name's Paul Milgram. Feel free to look him up.
Oh, it looks like Lou left us, but it's okay. All right, well, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of Crypto Mondays. It's been a blast. Barry, I want to thank you again for joining us, and catch us next week, guys. We'll be on same place, not the same time, but same place. Come see us. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.